What up, world? Is Big Prophet Jewel of the day. So this jewel is about shame, right? This is a jewel that I had on my mind for a long time, but today I just felt compelled to drop it, yo. I was thinking about it today, and I'm like, yo, we need to bring shaming back. We need to bring shame back. They shame out the game. Now we gotta bring shame back, yo, because these people ain't got no shame, and that's ruining the game, yo. We got to bring shame back, yo. I'm all for bringing shame back, yo. We got to bring back bullying, all that, you know. And it's not to say that it's always a good thing, or like there is some benefits to it. And we're missing those benefits in society, and people, these kids, they wildin'. It's all chaos. There's no order. And that's why I'm saying that's why there needs to be shame. Because this is how I view shame. Shame is the frame. Shame is the boundaries. Shame is the line, the hard lines of behavior we accept as a society and as people, as individuals. And there's two types of shame. I'll break this down. Because there's external shame, like a society shame, objective shame. Like all my jewels, there's two sides to it, at least. There may be more than two sides, but this I'm just gonna explain about two different sides, right? But there's the shame as a society, and then there's the internalized shame, you know, and I guess that would be the more negative one. They're both negative. They both got extremes, you know. It's like a spectrum or whatever, but let me tell you something. I'm gonna explain why I think we should bring back shame. So shame is the frame. This is the hard lines of what's acceptable behavior and what's not acceptable. And when you get rid of the boundaries, when there's no boundaries, there's no order. Then it's all chaos. People are liable to do anything, and everybody just lets it go, right? So shame is like the punishment. And it's not even just a punishment. It's just like, yo, you bump up against a wall, you're going to get shamed for that behavior, and you should get shamed for that behavior. And that's why you got issues like this. People don't want to step up and shame motherfuckers for doing what's wrong. What we all know is wrong. And that's why you got motherfuckers like Diddy and shit like that. Because, yo, nobody's shaming them. They all got yes men. And this is like a yes man society, you know. And this is what's crazy. Is like, we accept so much people, and we coddle so much behaviors that's not good for in the long run, you know. Everybody's worried about their feelings, and it's like, yo, fuck your feelings, yo. What's right at the end of the day? What's the result at the end of the day? Like, generationally, what's going to be the result of these things? And that's what we got to consider, because we're living in this is a whole vibrational thing, you know. Like when you're in pain, or when you're just thinking about right now. When you're focused on your feelings, you're just thinking about what's right now. You're not thinking about what's the long-term effects of these decisions, yo. And that's what we're doing as a society. We're not thinking about the long-term effects. That's why we need shame. Shame these niggas, shame these bitches, shame them all, because that's like, this shit should not be accepted. They got no shame. That's why you got the Diddy, because this nigga ain't got no shame. He's doing all this shit and nobody's shaming him. Surrounded by yes men, that everything's okay. So I'm just turning this into a crazy rant, but yo, let's boil this down. Like, as a society, we need boundaries. As an individual, we need boundaries. As parents, we need boundaries. As businesses, we need boundaries. We have ethics. And this is the thing. Like, we push back because we need freedom, right? We do need freedom, and we shouldn't be shamed for every little thing, so we have no freedom, right? So there needs to be a balance. Where's this line get drawn, you know? And I believe the line needs to be drawn where it becomes detrimental to the long-term effects of the individual or society, you know? Like, what happens to the children is, like, that's what we have to look at. Like, yo, you could this is the dilemma that we're going through in society, is the boundaries of what's acceptable and what's not. So this is a very important discussion about shame, and this is just a label for the concept of what separates morality, like the difference between right and wrong, the difference between acceptable and not acceptable, and detrimental and harmless, or what's okay and not okay, and we're going through this transition of trying to push back of what's acceptable so people have more freedoms, but at the same time we're allowing so much that we don't have structure anymore, and people are confused of what's acceptable, and these children are confused, and they're getting misled because these people don't think of the long term. They don't even do the research to understand why these boundaries or these rules or these structures were put in place in the first place, and like people are rebelling against religion and everything, because religion is a set of rules, and it's a culture that dictates what's acceptable and what's not, and what's moral, what's not, what's right and what's wrong, and these are structures that lasted for thousands of years, and they were put in place for a reason. And that's the issue, I believe, is that people aren't considering why these rules were put in place in the first place, and it's because motherfuckers was wilding and doing all this shit, crazy shit, and it was gonna destroy society. So that's why they had to put these rules in place, because this is chaos. If you don't have this rule, this will lead to chaos. Is it all about what's morally right or morally wrong? I guess you could decide that for yourself as an individual, but it doesn't, to me, what's morally right or morally wrong depends on the result, or like, I'm not even concerned about morals, because you can have your own individual set of morals, right? And that your morals might not align with my morals or whatever. It's subjective, unless you use an objective reference like the Bible or whatever, right? And that's the whole point of the Bible and religion, to give an objective standard, right? And that's great, and that's a tool, and that's why it should be used. And it's up to you whether you want to use it or not. You know what I mean? And that's not for me to decide what's right or wrong for you. But if you I look at it like this, like the Bible, all of everything. I don't look at any, like, there's this quote, I think it was Mark Twain or Shakespeare, I can't remember, but it was like, nothing is good or bad until a man thinks so, right? And that's how I look at everything, like the Bible is an objective thing. Whether it's good or bad, it's a thing until the person attributes it with its own meaning. And that's why I had that dual meaning, like everything's an object. It's a inanimate object until we give it meaning, so the Bible, it's an inanimate object until we say, oh, this rule was good, this gave us a better life. And the other person will look at it as like, hey, well, this was used in this kind of way, so it's not a good thing. And it's not about it being a good or bad thing. It's just how it was used. It's a tool. Like a screwdriver isn't a good or bad thing. I mean, it is a good thing when you use it, but it's a bad thing when you misuse it, right? So that's what everything is. Like, it's good if it's useful, and it's bad if it's misused, right? So that's why, same with shame. Same with shame. Everything, all these, even these ideas and these concepts, they're objects that are not physical, but they're objects in our mind that we create, and we can either use them or misuse them, right? And these are hard lines. These are structures that we could build a society on, or it'll crumble. You know what I mean? And we have to have structure so we can have order, so we can build upon that, right? And we can't just have just energy flowing, or else it becomes chaotic. And there needs to be freedom. So there has to be a balance. So there needs to be freedom to discuss these things. But everything has an extreme, right? There's a point where things go from good to bad, right? And that's another idea. But it's like what's bad is detrimental to others, and that's where you have to have a moral compass, but a moral theory as well. Like there's a point where anything could, like a medicine, you could overdose on a medicine. It's like it could be beneficial, but you take too much of it, you could overdose. It could become poisonous, and that's how everything in the world is. There's a point where something that's good can become bad, and there's a line that must be drawn so people understand. Like, you can't use or take this past this point before it becomes poisonous, before it becomes detrimental or harmful. So that's where this line of shame, we press this line of like, don't do this, don't do that, don't do this, don't do that, and then we're like socially imposed upon one another this idea of this line is of what's acceptable, what's not, what's harmful, what's harmless, what's okay, and what's wrong. I mean, and we need to bring that back so that it's not complete chaos. But also, on the flip side, the internalized shame, this is where shame could definitely become very harmful. Each of us, we all have our own shame. We have our own trauma. We have the story that we tell ourselves over and over again throughout our entire life of what is acceptable and what's not acceptable, what we love about ourselves or what we hate about ourselves, or what other people told us about ourselves that we believe, and that's where it gets really crazy. Is like, somebody will tell you you're ugly or you're fat or you're stupid, and then you're telling yourself this for the rest of your life, and then other people, and you've been telling yourself this for so many years that when people try to tell you like, nah, that's not true, you don't believe them. You try to argue with them. You try to defend this shit because you accepted that, right? And now you accept that as part of yourself, right? Like when you accept it, you make it you. You understand me? Like information, this is the thing. And this is the whole thing about shame and about ideas and concepts and information and who we are as human beings and how we operate. From birth, we take information and we accept it, and it becomes part of us, and this is how we build our identity and how we understand the world. We take this information, we build it. Somebody said this is blue, we believe it, we accept that this is blue. You know what I mean? And then like if someone's like, nah, that's green, what are you gonna do? You're gonna reject that because it goes against what you accepted first. If somebody says this is right and this is wrong, you're gonna automatically object this based off of what you accepted first, and this is just how we operate as human beings, like this is a bias that we develop. This is just how we operate. Once you understand biases and you understand just how we work psychologically, like it starts to unravel like how we deal with information in the future. Like once you become aware, like, oh yeah, I have these biases, then you could look at things more objectively instead of subjectively. But we're talking about shame subjectively, so this is what things mean to you instead of what it is objectively outside of you, like the objects outside of you, the things that don't have meaning until you attribute the meaning to them. So let's say shame is an object. It's not good, it's not bad, but it is a tool. Now, you could use this shame internally as a good thing. You could be like, like, bro, you're not working out. Bro, you're not working hard enough. You're not doing this thing. Like, this is good for motivation, right? But if you're using shame, or if you're misusing shame internally, then you'd be like, you're ugly, you're stupid, you can't do all this. And this is the problem. Like, we bully ourselves, we use shame against ourselves, and it's been used against us because as kids we don't understand how powerful our words are, right? And it's like sticks and stones and all this shit, right? Like they say that just to Like, yo, your mind is powerful enough. You could use these things against these words against you your whole life, or you have the power to disempower these words and these ideas that have been used against you, yo. Like, for sure, sticks and stones are objects and they could like fuck your life up, but so can the words that you empower and keep playing on repeating your mind, you know. So like that shit will traumatize you for the rest of your life. People will say these shits, and like this will dictate how you live the rest of your life if you let it. And that's why you gotta learn how to question things that we've accepted in the past. You know, as we get older, we gotta question any kind of information that we had from before, yo, from when we were younger, or else we're gonna just accept things that people told us, you know, and they don't know what they talk about. They just saying it's just like a ripple effect of misinformation or misuse, shame, you know. So that's what I mean. Like, we gotta think about the long-term effects. That's where it is, and that's where it's an objective thing. Like, the long-term effects is an objective thing. It's not like we gotta be able to separate the feelings in a moment from the long-term effects in the long run, because that's we gotta get out of our heads in just a moment. We gotta start realizing, like, yo, these things are powerful. They will echo on through generations, and that's why we're also in this transition at this period of time as a people. Is like we're learning to be more conscious of the long-term effects, and this is why it's a two-sided coin, where it's just like, yeah, we're rebelling against shame, but we also need to have shame. And we're rebelling to take control of the narrative, but we also need to write a better one and realize where the narrative from the past, so we could continue it in the right direction and not just make a story or rewrite or rebuild the fucking wheel, and, you know, not as well, you know, reinvent the wheel. Like, that's what people are trying to do, and it's like trying to fucking fit a circle in a square and shit, or a square in a circle, yo. This shit ain't working, yo. And it's like you gotta use the experience of the past and build upon that. You gotta understand the context of the situation. And if you're looking just at the short term and you're just looking at how things make you feel as a child, you're gonna be misled, yo. You're gonna be easily misled, and that's what's happening. It's a shame. It is a shame, you know. That's a problem, you know. So, like, this is what I would like to boil it down to, yo. Is like, there's useful shame and there's misused shame, you know. Shame is not necessarily a bad thing, man, but shame is also a frame. It's a boundaries. Like, we can enforce the boundaries, but we also gotta realize that the other side of if we're talking about no shame, our people shouldn't have shame. This is the thing that triggered it today for me, is the thought. It's like, if we don't shame people, we normalize a behavior that's unacceptable, right? If people have a mess, but you're scared of hurting people's feelings, and you don't shame them for this mess that they keep creating, you're normalizing this fucking mess, and nobody's dealing with it, you know. And this is the problem, is we're normalizing a mess, chaos. We're normalizing chaos, and this is the problem. That's the issue. We can't normalize chaos. We shouldn't normalize chaos, you know. I don't even want to use these words, can't or shouldn't, you know. Understand, like, if we normalize chaos, what is the long-term effects of these things? You know, like, this is what we're dealing with. If we normalize chaos and we vilify order, where's our society headed, you know? So it's like, we need order, but we need freedom. So we gotta try to balance those two things, because if you don't have order, you got chaos. If you don't have freedom, it's like a dictatorship. It's all these things that everybody's afraid of, yo. Like, then it's hell either way, on either side of the thing. So it's a balancing act, and that's why you need both sides. That's why you need both sides. You need to listen to both sides and hear out both sides. It's like, yo, everything needs to be taken in consideration. It's a balancing act. So yeah, let's bring back shame. Let's shame these people. But there's a line of when shame is acceptable and not acceptable. Just like anything. Any behavior, there's a line. Let's draw the fucking line. Let's figure out what this line is. What's acceptable and what's not. And the only way to figure out what's acceptable and what's not is to realize the long-term effects of these decisions, yo. And we shouldn't have to find out the hard way. We're conscious beings. We could think, like, let's logically think of what's the next steps if we progress this way. What are the next steps, yo? We could avoid a lot of situations just thinking of what's gonna happen. If we continue behaving like this, what's gonna happen? And that's the solution, I believe, you know. So if you think something's right or wrong, shame the motherfucker, you know. And it's okay to shame the shamer too. Like, shame the shamer. We gotta bump our heads against a fucking wall, or we'll just fall off the edge. And then we'll all fall off the edge, you know. And that's because there is an edge. There is a line where it just, you fall and get into trouble, yo. You know what I mean? So that's why we need walls. That's why we need hard lines. That's why we need to stop. At some point, somebody's got to take responsibility and draw the fucking line and enforce it. And enforce the line. You know what I mean? As a society, we have to enforce it upon one another, you know. And then on the internalized side of it is like, yo, dictate what's acceptable in your own life. That's responsibility. That's maturity. You know, you have to be your own parent. We have to parent one another as a society, you know, and our children, and act responsibly so they can have a structure, so they have reference, so they have something they can follow, and they know what's right or wrong. We have to live by example, so the future could live by a good example as well, you know. Like, that's it. Like, society, that's the shame, is the example, you know. That's the model. We have to model behavior that's gonna leave the next generation in a better place. And it's not just about how you feel right now. It's about how you're gonna feel in the future, yo. No, man. It's about how they're gonna feel in the future. You have to think about the generations in the future, and that's where we're at now. If we're gonna get rid of all these generational traumas, we have to start from here, taking responsibility for where we're at now, and changing the direction we're going. And we have to be able to shame one another for, like, this is the thing. Don't accept the shame as your identity. And that's a whole problem. Is the internalized shame is accepting it as your identity. You don't have to accept where you're at right now as a finite thing. Like there's no way out. No, just accept it as, like, yo, this is a situation that can change. You're fat now, you don't have to be fat your whole life. You're dumb now, you don't have to be dumb your whole life. You know what I mean? Like, you're insecure, you're not confident. You don't have to be that right now. You can accept it and build on that, you know. And that's what it is. And it's like, you're broke, you don't have to be broke your whole life. You know what I mean? And that's the great and the powerful thing about being a human being. You could change all these things. You could change your mind and decide, I'm not gonna live like this no more. I could be the one that changed the whole chain and series of events, a series of generations from this point forward. And that's where we're at right now. We have so much at our disposal, so many resources to be able to make that change, to facilitate that. And this is the generation that must change. you know, but we have to do it consciously, and we also have to be aware of where we're at, where we're coming from, so we can decide where we're going. And I think shame is the frame, is the tool. We could, it's a useful tool. It's a useful tool. So like, let's not be afraid of shame, but it's also like, let's not misuse shame. Let's be conscious of how we're affecting others and how we're affecting ourselves with it, you know. So don't misuse shame, but let's bring it back. Let's bring it back, because these motherfuckers is wilding. These people is wilding. It's chaotic out here. It's chaotic. So let's bring it back. You know what I mean? It's useful. All right, nothing but peace and love. Prophet Jewel, we out.